Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for coming back. This time we're off up north to Scotland to look at the small class 26 and 27s. Got a few images for you from both of those classes, starting very early on when they first moved to Scotland, right the way through to the end. Please sit back, relax and enjoy the video. Thanks. If you love trains, history and a bit of Scottish grit, you'll enjoy today's video. We're talking about two classes of British Rail diesel locomotives that don't always get the same attention as the big names like the Deltics or the Class 37s, but they absolutely should. They are the Type 2 twins, the British Rail Class 26 and Class 27, built in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and they've got a brilliant story to tell. So make yourself comfortable, because this is a tale of how a bunch of diesels from Birmingham ended up defining Scottish railways for decades. Let's go back to 1955, the modernisation plan. British Railways had realised that steam was getting, well, a bit old-fashioned, costly, dirty and hard work. The plan was ambitious: electrify some main lines, replace steam with diesels and modernise the whole railway system. But here's the problem: nobody really knew which kind of diesel would work best. So they did the most British thing possible. They ordered lots of different designs from lots of different manufacturers to see what stuck. And one of those manufacturers was the Birmingham Railway Carriage and Wagon Company, BRCW, based in Smethwick in Birmingham, and they were asked to come up with a medium-powered diesel-electric locomotive, something with about 1,200 horsepower, for mixed traffic work. The result was the Type 2, powered by a Swiss-made Sulzer engine and designated the Class 26 under the later TOPS system. Now these engines, officially the Sulzer 6LDA28, were big six-cylinder beasts capable of 1,160 horsepower. Not huge by later standards, but plenty for the late 1950s. The locomotives themselves were numbered D5300 to D5346, and the first ones appeared in 1958. They looked quite smart in that early British Railways green livery with white cab roofs and, of course, the glorious line and wheel crest. Initially, they were allocated to both the eastern and Scottish regions, but it didn't take long before Scotland basically claimed them. The terrain up north was hilly, twisty and tough, and these locos just thrived on it. Drivers liked them. They were simple, strong and dependable. The controls were straightforward, the engines were robust, and the traction motors gave plenty of pulling power for their size. They weren't glamorous, but they got the job done, which, in railway terms, is the highest praise you can give. Now, once BRCW got the hang of building diesels, they did what any good engineer does. They decided to tweak the design. The result? The Class 27. Think of it like the iPhone S model of the 26. It looks basically the same, but it's got a bit more power and a few improvements under the hood. The Class 27s used a slightly uprated Sulzer engine, the 6LDA28-B, which produced 1,250 horsepower. They were numbered D5347 to D5415 and entered service around 1961. Original allocations were to Glasgow Eastfield, Thornaby and London Crittlewood for Tilbury boat trains and cross-London freight services. In the period September to December 1963, some of the Crittlewood allocation were transferred to Leicester, and the Thornaby allocation was also nominally transferred to Leicester to join them in 1965. Traffic changes, combined with the reallocation of Class 25s, led to the gradual transfer of the Leicester and Crittlewood locomotives to Scotland during 1969. This then concentrated the whole class within Scotland. Visually, the differences between the two classes are subtle. You can spot them if you know what you're looking for, but to most people, they were identical. They had the same wheel arrangement, the same cab shape, the same general look, but the 27s could accelerate just that little bit quicker and handle heavier trains a bit better. They were intended for both passenger and freight work, but just like their older cousins, they ended up spending most of their lives in Scotland. And this is where the story really takes root. because the 26s and 27s became the locomotives of Scottish railways throughout the 1960s and 1970s. They worked the main line routes out of Glasgow and Edinburgh, across to Aberdeen and Inverness, and down to the borders. They hauled everything: express passenger trains, local stoppers, parcels, engineers' trains, and heavy freight. They made regular appearances on the West Highland line, that spectacular route from Glasgow to Fort William and Mallaig, with its steep gradients and stunning scenery. The 26s in particular were known for their reliability in tough conditions. They had excellent traction and were often fitted with snow ploughs for winter use. There's something wonderfully evocative about the idea of a green or blue Sulzer growling its way through the snowdrift of Rannoch Moor. But by the 1970s, British Rail was evolving again. They wanted faster and more efficient services, especially on the busy Glasgow to Edinburgh corridor. And someone had the bright idea: what if we could make push-pull services? That is, trains where the locomotive doesn't need to run round at each end. You just drive from the other cab and loco that pushes from the rear. Very clever and very modern. To make this work, BR modified a batch of Class 27s, giving them electric train heating and control systems so they could be operated from the driving trailer. These became known as the Class 27-2s. Unfortunately, this experiment didn't go entirely to plan. The extra electrical load of the heating systems caused constant generator problems. The locomotives overheated, the circuits failed, and reliability plummeted. Drivers and maintenance weren't exactly thrilled. They spent more time fixing them than actually using them. The push-pull sets did work for a while, and they looked great in that classic blue and grey livery. But the 27-2s were eventually replaced by more capable locomotives, the Class 47-7s, in 1979. Renumbered back to 27-0s, the locomotives then found use on the Edinburgh to Dundee circuit, amongst other work. Meanwhile, the Class 26s kept plodding along as they always had. They were never flashy, but they were tough. They became the go-to locomotives for engineering, trains and freight work, especially in the Highlands. However, as newer locomotives arrived and freight traffic declined, the writing was on the wall. By the mid-1980s, both the 26s and 27s were being withdrawn from service. Some were scrapped quickly, others soldiered on for departmental duties. The last Class 26 bowed out in October 1993, and the final Class 27 much earlier in August 1987. Thankfully, the story doesn't end there, because, as always, the preservation movement came to the rescue. Several locomotives from both classes were saved, restored, and returned to working order. You can still find Class 26s and 27s at heritage railways across the UK. Despite their mainly Scottish origins, they are popular all over the United Kingdom. The Bowness and Kinneil Railway, the Strathspey, and lines right down in the south, like the Mid-Hants, have seen Class 26s or 27s working. There's something magical about seeing one of them in action, that deep, rhythmic Sulzer growl as they ease a train out of the station, just as they did half a century ago. And it's thanks to the dedication of volunteers and enthusiasts that these locomotives are still around today. Many of them have been repainted in their original liveries, BR green and BR blue, and they're photogenic as ever. So, what's their legacy? Well, the Class 26 and 27 might not have been the most powerful or the most famous, but they were incredibly important. They were the workhorses that provided diesel traction all across Scotland and proved that they could handle the demands of Britain's varied routes. They bridged the gap between the steam era and the modern railway. They showed what could be done with smart engineering, solid construction, and just that right balance of power and reliability. They were, in a way, the unsung heroes of the dieselisation era. When you think about it, these locomotives are more than just machines. They're part of the story of how Britain modernised its transport. They're symbols of a time when the railways were reinventing themselves, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much. But every time one of those preserved 26s or 27s starts up and that Sulzer engine coughs into life, you're hearing history. You're hearing the sound that once echoed through the Scottish glens, over viaducts, through tunnels, and down to the coast. And for me, that's what makes them special. They're not just relics, they're reminders. reminders of the people who drove them, built them, and maintained them, and those who loved them. So next time you're at a heritage railway and you spot a Class 26 or a 27, take a moment to appreciate it, because these were the locomotives that kept the railways running when the future was uncertain. They were solid, dependable, and quietly brilliant. And that is the story of the British Rail Class 26 and 27, the Type 2 twins that powered Scotland's diesel dawn. Well, I hope you've enjoyed listening to that narration and seeing the images so far. There's several more minutes left, so there'll be some music to take you through to the end of the video. This Day in History, the Salty Loco Shed logbooks. And this video is uploaded to YouTube on the 8th of November. So this time we're looking at the pages from the 1983 logbook for Salty Shed covering that day. There's two images stretching over from the period Monday the 7th of November at 13:20 right through to 21:40 on the evening of Wednesday the 9th of November. All the usual stuff, nothing particularly special. No 26s or 27s, of course, far too far south. Just their sister 25 locos in abundance. Probably the most interesting thing for me on that page is on the second page of the first image, on the 8th at 5:15 in the morning, when 2165 and 167, on what looks like a 79 trip, taking a brake van B955139 off the shed. It says to tops location 66312, which was Washford Heath sidings. And it wasn't uncommon for brake vans to come on the shed with an engine, although if you look at the next page, that one was on and off a couple of times. B955139, if you put that into the internet, into Google, that brake van was part of the Rainhill Trials cavalcade with a Welsh Paul engine. 24th of May 1980, I think it said. And then later in life, it was a nuclear flask dedicated brake van on the Sellafield circuit. Don't know whether that one's preserved today. I couldn't find any record of that, but it'd be interesting to know if you know. Let us know in the comments. So yeah, a bit of a celebrity brake van on the books there. So yeah, enjoy looking at those images of the Salty Shed logbook. Thanks very much for watching the video. Please do like, share, subscribe, and if you feel so inclined, scan the Buy Me a Coffee QR code to support the channel. See you in the next video.